Welcome back, everybody. Today we have Jason with us. And how are you doing today, Jason?
I'm good, sir. Good to be here.
Awesome.
Happy to be here.
So, for everybody that is watching, if you know, maybe some of you don't, but I know a lot of people do, I was asked to be on the end of a documentary at the panel to talk with other burn survivors. And Jason here was actually on the documentary, and it was Courage Rising. And we're gonna go ahead and get into that because you want to talk about an amazing documentary. That was it. So, Jason, I would love to hear about your experience in that documentary.
Yeah. God, I don't even know where to start. Um, it's life changing. So back in early 2020, I got a call from my doctor, Dr. Foster, who was one of my doctors when I was in the hospital. And it's weird that he called because he typically never calls me. It's a happy birthday, it's something related to the Burn Foundation, whatever it is, but there's never a call.
So you were nervous when he called.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my first thought is, someone's at the burn center who needs help for whatever reason, family member, maybe
Yeah.
it's the survivor itself. But that's my first thought. So anyway, I answer the phone. Hey, Dr. Foster, what's going on? And he have a little small talk, and he says, "So, would you like to hike Mount Kilimanjaro?" And this is Dr. Foster. This is the guy who saved my life. It's like, what do you say? And I'm like, well,
Exactly.
sure. That's my first response is sure. And I really have no idea. I've heard of Mount Kilimanjaro. Um, I've At some point, I'm sure I've seen a picture of Mount Kilimanjaro, but I never thought about hiking Mount Kilimanjaro until he called. And he says, this will be a fundraiser for the new burn center that they're building. I'm like, yes, yes, just let's do this. Sign me up. I finished chatting with him, hang up, and my first thing is like, let me Google hiking Kilimanjaro because I agreed to it. But I just don't know what I agreed to yet. It's like what do you do? So I Googled it, figured it out, and the rest kind of went from there. So we started training shortly after, and then that was right during COVID, unfortunately. So for those who have seen the documentary, it didn't take place until June of 2022. So we had a good 2 years of training around different hikes in Arizona just to get
Yeah.
ready. Because Kilimanjaro's not easy. It's over 19,000 feet is the elevation. So it took a lot. So we trained for almost 2 years straight, just going through various. We hiked the Grand Canyon one day, which was exciting in itself.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, we
Do
did a
that
lot.
just for your training.
Yeah, it's things that most people never get to do in their entire life. And
Yeah.
we're doing it to train to get ready for something even bigger.
Yeah.
So we trained for about 2 years. Built our team. Our team was 8 burn survivors, and then we had, I want to say it was 45 or 46 additional supporters with us. My doctor, Dr. Foster, was one of them. Some donors for the foundation, nurses, just people who wanted to be involved in supporting something big,
Yeah.
something you just don't hear about every day. You don't hear about the accident and the recovery all in the same story, which is different, I think. So a lot of different supporters, different burn survivors, and we all have a lot in common. Some of us had never met before, and one of our training hikes was the first time we'd ever met. but it's amazing, in my opinion, that when you start talking to another survivor, the stories they mirror themselves in so many ways.
Yeah.
From the trauma of the accident to things that happened during their stay and things that happened during recovery. It's everyone. It felt like I knew everyone already.
Yeah, you connect a lot easier. There's
Yeah,
so much to relate on that, and that's the thing, like you said, there's so much to relate on that others will never understand. So when you do talk to another survivor, like you said, you never met before, but you connect instantly because you guys can relate so much and that you understand each other.
yeah, for sure. And the funny thing is the ultimate question that comes up, or the discussion is about dressing change. That seems to be always a discussion point. Like, you know, tell me about tell me about your experience in dressing change. For as traumatic as it is,
Yeah.
it's definitely a bonding moment with another survivor. So so we trained, met the survivors, and met other donors along the way. But in June 2022 is when we set off for Tanzania, which is where Mount Kilimanjaro is located. So it's southeastern Africa. Uh, Quite the journey to get there. I think almost 15-hour plane ride just to get to Tanzania. So that was an experience in itself. But we get there, and part of the our guide service was a company called K2 Adventures. They also have a nonprofit called the K2 Adventure Foundation.
Okay.
So part of our trip was not only to hike Kilimanjaro, but we also, you know, met some Tanzanians and did some community service in Tanzania. So we went to the school, we painted, we chatted with the kids, played soccer, just enjoying the culture of Tanzania.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
That's
it
what I was
was
gonna
more than
say.
just, hey, let's run to Tanzania and climb Kilimanjaro, and that's the end of it. It was there's a lot of healing, uh, both emotionally and I think physically in Tanzania from you know giving back to to the kids and the people of Tanzania, and then also climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So we had 2 days of you know let's call it community service, I guess,
Yeah.
of just supporting, and then we're on the mountain, and it's like the 2 years has flown by. I can still remember the day they called. So it's kind of all floods back to you at that moment. So we started. It's a 7-day trek. So day one starts off in the rainforest, and it's pretty easy going. A lot of chit chat, a lot of talking with the guides, and the survivors are all have a smile on their face, and everyone's happy, right? It's a great day. But that's only day one of seven, uh, and it just goes on from there. Every day was different. Um, the scenery was different. The terrain was different. The weather was different. It sometimes it varied by the hour. The
Yeah.
weather would change. So it's just constantly paying attention to what's going on around you.
Was there a point when you were hiking that you stopped and was just like, "What am I doing?" Like, did you ever have that point like, "Oh my god, like, what did I get myself into?"
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The moment we started, that was,
Yeah,
you know, and
that's what I would be like, "What am I
yeah,
doing? Why did I agree to this?"
yeah, and I had said it, and it comes out in the documentary, and I'll share it now. But when I sat in the burn center, so I was an 80% burn. So I spent 6 weeks in a coma, and months of rehab. And there was a point when I actually said out loud to myself, I said, I'll probably never hike again, and
Yeah.
to say it out loud, to think it's one thing, I think, and to say it out loud is something different. It's more of a reality, and that's, I think, I would say probably one of my low points, um, in the hospital. Just thinking about what I'm never going to do again. I'm my life will never be the same. I'll never hike. I'll never do this. I'll never do that.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal for me that day, to be staying there starting again. Almost like, in the practice hikes, I don't think counted. They counted in the miles, but they didn't count emotionally yet. And standing there was an emotional moment, like getting ready to go.
Yeah, I bet. You think, yeah, you're hiking as in training, you're training your body physically
Hmm.
to be able to endure all that, but mentally, you're not really training very much mentally because you're not in the same environment. Arizona to the rainforest, that's a two different things. So when you get there, that mental side, you're like, "Oh, I got this," and then you're completely different environment. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and I don't think. I mean, I don't think I took it as serious as it is. It's Mount Kilimanjaro. I mean, it's one of the seven summits of the world. It's
Crazy.
19,342 feet high. It's I didn't, the reality didn't set in until I was there. And then once that reality sets in, it's like, how did I get here? Why am I even here? And then you start thinking back to, day one of your accident. That's why you're there.
Yep.
Because, you know, we were burned. That's the reason we're there. And we're there to prove that, even though I thought it in the hospital, that, my life's over. I'm never going to do anything. That's a fallacy. It's just not. It's not accurate. You know, the other survivors that were with me, I think, thought the same thing in their journey. Is where do I go from here? It just doesn't look up
Yeah.
from here. So I think it all flooded back, and it was an emotional. It was emotional. Every day got more emotional getting towards the summit.
I bet.
So so every day was different. Um, from rainforest to a moonscape. Um, Everything was different. And then you get to day 7. It's been rough. People have gotten sick. People aren't feeling as great as they did what they were on day one.
Yeah.
For various reasons. The altitude is tough. It's going through a big burn injury, or an injury of any type. I think um, is is traumatic. The whole experience is traumatic, right? And to be
Yeah.
standing there on day 7, thinking back about all that, I think the emotions at that point were the highest they were going to be. So we started off at, I want to say, 3:30 in the morning is when our day started,
Rough right off the
and it's
bat.
cold. Yeah, it's cold too. Believe me, I live in Arizona for a reason. I'm not a fan of the cold, uh, but it was cold. I remember that. Just standing there waiting to get started, and it's dark. You can see 3 feet in front of you. That's about all you see, and you start walking. Um, and you can see the lights from people's headlamps who have started earlier than you. People have started at 2 in the morning. They want sunrise on Kilimanjaro. But so you can see the people, and it's just a steady stream going up the side of Kilimanjaro. Uh, but you watch the sunrise as you're climbing up. It's it's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, I bet it was amazing.
Yeah, standing there. You can see the curvature of the earth. You're above the clouds. And you're remembering why you're there. That's I think the important part is not to get lost in how you're there. Um, we just kept trekking along. We stop, walk some more, stop, walk some more. It's a long day. So we got to what's called Stella Point, which is unofficially the summit of Kilimanjaro. It's about still over 19,000 feet in altitude, so it's the high point. So we got to Stella Point. I want to say it was around 10 a.m., 10:15. And the emotion hadn't really hit at that point. It was building. Um, I think because there was still more to do.
Yeah.
There was still the actual highest point, on the continent of Africa, which is Mount Kilimanjaro. So we rested for a while, and the group of survivors, all 8 of us, um, got back up and said, "Let's do this," and started walking towards the summit. And an hour and a half later, we all touched the sign at almost the same time and completed the journey. You know,
Incredible.
yeah, it was. Um, yeah, it was. There's not words to describe it. To I think to stand there, um, the highest point on the continent of Africa, and to know where you came from,
Yeah.
it's a very proud moment.
I was just gonna say that had to be like one of the proudest moments, you know, beating the odds and doing what you physically came out of your mouth, what you said that you'll never do again. And
Yeah,
the highest mountain in Africa, you just conquered it.
yeah,
What's
it's
more badass than that?
yeah, it's and it just like I said before, like I said out loud, I'd never hike again, um, and I've summited Mount Kilimanjaro. How many? There's not a lot of people who can say they've summited Kilimanjaro, and there's even less people who can say they survived a 80% burn
Yeah.
and went on to thrive.
And you did both.
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not been easy. I think we just kind of gloss over the what it really takes to do it. To overcome something traumatic. And it's just like hiking Kilimanjaro, but it's not easy. I think I told you when we talked earlier. It's been 10 years. So my accident was in 2014, in
Yeah.
February of 2014, so early 2014. It's been 10 years. We're in 2024, and I recently had to go back to therapy. To
Yeah.
deal with you know traumas that still lingered. That I didn't think were there. I don't know if Kilimanjaro brought it out of me. Just the change and the mindset and the change in how I felt about myself, but it showed up again. So uh, the journey's not easy, either one, and it changes. I did therapy directly as soon as I got out of the hospital. Like
Okay.
I was in the hospital. I went to rehab for a couple months, got out of rehab, and was directly into therapy. And luckily, I don't know how I got so lucky, but I found a therapist who did EMDR. And I shouldn't say I found, my mother found a therapist who did EMDR. And before, and I even think for a lot of people listening now, they maybe wonder, I had never heard of EMDR. I had never heard of it before.
Yeah, I actually have done it, but
Yeah.
before I did it, I've never heard of it, knew nothing about it, and I think it's extremely hard to explain how it works
Yeah,
because it's a completely, very weird. I don't know. It's very strange.
yeah, it's an experience. Uh,
Yes.
I like to say that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's the best way to put it. It is an experience. Oh yeah.
yeah, but EMDR, I would would tell people just Google EMDR. You'll get a thousand results on what EMDR
Yeah.
is. Um, but I like to cut to the chase, and I think it helped me with my trauma. You know, at the point I was at in my recovery, the EMDR I did, I think probably saved my life. You know,
Yeah.
from a not being happy. Uh, I'm just out of I'm just out of rehab, which is out of the hospital. I still have open wounds. They hadn't all healed yet. And, this is October, and I don't think my wounds healed until my last grafting surgery took place. I think January the following year. So, I was in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Um, but I found a therapist who I connected with, and who did EMDR, and it saved my life. But that's just one part, and that was right after, and I did therapy for, EMDR is, not one and done. It's not,
No.
hey, you did it and things great and you walk away. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot of work. It's exhausting. Uh,
Absolutely. It's extremely draining.
yeah, yeah. It's mentally and physically just, um, yeah, just draining. But I went to therapy for a good year and a half, and dealt with some of the traumatic things that happened in the hospital, and traumatic things that happened when I was burned. Um, and took a little break. I think that's important. Therapy isn't
Absolutely.
a constant 10-year thing. There's different things at different times that need attention. So I took a couple-year break from therapy. Went back, I think in years 5 or 6, and dealt with some new things that had shown up. My life had changed
Yeah.
from what it was 6 years earlier, 5 years earlier. I was 180 degrees different
Y
than what I had started. So how can there not be some mental health that needs to happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
every year of my journey was different. I think the first year was, for me, was just about surviving. It's just day to day, minute to minute. What's the next surgery? What's the next physical therapy appointment? When's the next doc appointment? That's what it was. It was just surviving.
Yeah, which is so I think how that is so weird because you think just like you said, that first year is you're surviving.
Hmm.
Now, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about it too, is that first year, you don't even remember half the stuff because every day is it's like you don't want to remember, so you just go through the day just to get it done so
Yeah,
you can feel better, it's just it's one of those things like, right now, yeah, like, "What did you do yesterday?" You can say, "Oh, I went and did this, that."
mhm,
But back then, it was like, "Hey, what'd you do yesterday?" "I don't know, and I don't care. I just
yeah,
wanna keep moving."
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
what it was. Because I look back now and I'm thinking in my head as you're saying, it was just serving, and you're right, because half of it, you don't even remember exactly what you did because you didn't care.
yeah,
You just wanted to make it through this to get to that point where, like, now I can enjoy a little bit.
yeah. I think it's good we don't remember sometimes. I heard from my therapist one time, and I don't know how true it is. It feels true to me, but she said, uh, the body never forgets. So subconsciously, you know, consciously we don't know what's going on. Subconsciously, our body knows what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's the trauma that gets trapped in our, in our bodies, that causes, causes problems, causes, coping mechanisms to kick in, you know. It's
You're right.
the body doesn't. I don't think the body ever forgets the trauma, and I think that's what EMDR, you know, and we're I don't neither one of us is psychologists or psychiatrists, so I think we just tell it how it is, and from the everyday guy perspective,
Yeah.
I think that's just how we tell it how it is. But yeah, that first year is definitely
Yeah.
survival mode. But the drugs I was saying, like, I'm glad we don't remember some of this stuff because
But it's
it's
crazy it's crazy you say that, like, that your therapist said that your body never forgets, and how your body knows what it's going through even though that you really have no clue what's happening, but your
Mhm.
body understands. I don't know if you remember anything from your coma, but I remember, like, 85% of my coma,
Mm.
and
Uh,
there's multiple times where I was having nightmares in my coma that I was in a hospital setting, strapped to a bed, and in real life, I was in the hospital strapped to the bed.
oh wow,
But I
yeah,
physically didn't know that, because when I woke up, I didn't even know I was in the hospital.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
wild how it works.
there's a lot of. I mean, it makes me think of two different things actually. I'll share them both. I don't remember. I remember one of the two. The first one is early on. Would have I was heavily sedated, and mine and my wife's wedding song came on. Might make me cry, huh? Wow. So, but it came on, and she said I looked around the room and acknowledged everyone that was there. So, not that I remember, but my body remembers, right? And it's, I think, a natural thing that happened. I was surrounded by people who loved me. Um, and I think I think that's why the body remembers. And the second one, um, the biggest memory I have, uh, and I don't know when it was. I should say I should know. It was probably in May. I was burned in February. I spent February in a coma, half of March in a coma. April heavily sedated, and May. But I remember waking up in the hospital, thinking I was in Las Vegas, and I don't know why it's Las Vegas, but I was trying to get back to my kids. That was what was drawing me back, and I was trying to get on a plane, you know, to to sneak back. And I remember the nurse walking in and said, "What?" I'm sitting up trying to get out of bed, and I've got IVs and all the, everything's attached,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to get out of bed. She says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I got to get back to my kids." So that was uh, that was tough. That's the thing I remember about
Yeah.
comas. So
No, I it's very tough.
yeah,
When I woke up out of my coma, first I couldn't even talk because I had the trach in my throat.
yep,
So I couldn't even speak, and Tiffany actually had a whiteboard she bought. Just it was only, like, that big.
yeah. It's funny these
So
stories are all meshing because I remember the same thing.
yeah, so she had a whiteboard, and she was like, "You can try and write down whatever you need," which I couldn't say anything back, so and then being so doped up, I didn't even realize what was happening.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really write much, and she ended up asking me, "Do you know who I am?" And at that moment, I had no clue who she was,
Yeah.
and it's really scary because while I was in my coma, I thought that I was dreaming at home in bed, and that if I kicked her while I was sleeping, she would wake me up.
Yeah.
and then it just never happened. And then when I finally did wake up, I had no clue who she was.
Oh
And
wow.
she asked me, "Do you remember me?" And I just, "No."
Yeah.
Then she showed me pictures of my kids, and she was like, "Do you know these kids?" And I said, "Not at all."
Mm.
So she broke down, and then she ended up leaving because, the visitor hours in the ICU.
Yeah.
And I just sat there and I stared because now I'm up. There was no sleeping.
Hmm.
And I was just staring at the board where the nurses, they come in, they write their names, they all that. I just kept staring at the date. I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it. And finally it just clicked in my head that that's Tiffany's birthday.
Oh wow.
So the next morning when she walked in, the first thing I did was I wrote on the whiteboard, "Happy birthday."
Hmm.
And when I showed her, she was started crying, and I
Yeah.
was crying because "You remember me now." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." But it
I
was a
was.
scary moment because she thought, which the doctors told her, that much electricity hit his brain,
Yeah.
he might not ever remember you.
Yeah. I think I think one thing we always focus on, and we should, of course, is a survivor. But one thing we don't, and I think that rarely gets talked about, is spouses and
Yep.
children of survivors. It's you and I. Our accidents happened, and 50% of what occurred we've forgotten.
Yep.
Maybe it's more. Uh, but my wife doesn't forget. She
Yeah.
was, she was there, for the surgeries, the rehab, uh, the things that didn't go well that I have blocked out. She still remembers those things. So I think when we talk about therapy, and getting the help that you need, uh, we need to talk about the spouses, and boyfriends, girlfriends, kids. Our entire family went through therapy.
Yeah, yeah. You
It
need to
wasn't
afterwards.
Yeah, it wasn't just me. It was my wife and the kids.
Kids.
They were my son was 13 at the time. My daughter was 9. Uh,
My daughter, yeah, she was 9 too.
yeah, that's a tough age to almost lose your dad.
Yep.
So you got to get the you got to get them the help as much as the help you need for yourself.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, but everything for me, going back has been has been helpful, right? And it's it's that body never forgets thing, because this is stuff like, where did that come from? You know,
Yes.
things I've talked about. I've shared my story, hundreds of times. You know, to different people at different times in different scenarios, different settings, and uh, in the last year, I've shared the story and I've cried almost every time, which is different. I'm like, and I asked myself, I'm like, I've told this story 100 times. Why is this happening now? And I don't know, you know. Um, but it's my signal to go get some help, you know,
Yeah.
before it turns into anything else.
Yeah, it's crazy because, before this, it's just so wild how it really does affect you mentally and emotionally, and you don't even know why. Like,
Mhm.
you can't understand why. Before my accident, I couldn't tell you the last time that I cried.
We're men. We don't
Eh
cry.
Yeah, and then I get home out of the hospital, which out of nowhere, I was just an emotional wreck.
Yeah.
I would wake up screaming, just screaming, and then back asleep.
Mhm.
Or out of nowhere, I'd, be sitting watching TV with Tiffany, and all of a sudden I'd just start crying.
Yep.
"What's the matter?" "I don't know."
Yeah. You
"But
you
why are you crying?" You're like, "I don't know why I'm crying." And now you get more upset. You're like, "It won't stop. I'm just gonna sit here and let it roll."
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And you don't know what's wrong, but that is that was it. That was where Tiffany was like, "Maybe you should start talking to somebody."
Yeah, yeah, and it's
That was the
it's
sign right there. I was like, "Yeah, okay,
you
good."
know, unfortunately, a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this, is there's different coping mechanisms that we all have, and some of them just aren't healthy coping
No.
mechanisms. Um, that just bury the pain. You don't know why it's there, and you'll do anything to get rid of it.
Yep.
That's the struggle.
It
Yeah,
is a struggle. Mm.
yeah,
And it's why a lot of like you said, that we find that outlook, that something to cope with, and that's why a lot of people get addicted to these painkillers and everything because, yeah, you get the painkillers, which when you've been hurt like us and haven't gone through all of this, to go to a doctor and say, "I need Oxycontin," they're gonna be like, "Not a problem, here you go, here's 200 pills."
yeah,
So to get it is not an issue, it's the problem of abusing it.
yeah, yeah. And it's sometimes. I mean, I'll tell you mine. Mine was cigarettes, smoking. And that's how my accident happened.
Yeah.
I went into the garage. I was at a rental house. Went in the garage, um, smoked a cigarette. Lit the cigarette, and that was where my journey started. And to go back to it, you know, after what happened,
Yeah.
I knew it was. There was more to it than just being addicted. It was to help cover up what was underneath.
Yep.
It's tough, but I just encourage people. I think that's the hardest part of a burn injury or an injury or a big injury, of any type is there's the doctors there. They're the best in the world generally, to physically repair you. You know, but there's also a mental side of of your life and who you are, and uh, but they're not experts in that. And you 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 got to treat both.
You
You know,
do. You definitely do, yes.
yeah, the physical part of you and the uh, emotional part of you as well. And I think we forget about the emotional part, and that's sometimes just as important.
It I would say it's extremely important because, what kills me is that you've seen so many situations where these somebody has gone through something so traumatic and they've survived, and then after they've survived, they get so depressed that they turn to almost either suicide or something else.
Hmm.
You have survived a something most people don't survive,
Yes.
and then you're going to throw it all away after you've overcome it because of depression.
Mhm.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody because it does help.
Yeah. I mean, part of, I think, going back to Kilimanjaro, I think that whole, it's not so much the physical part of it, it's the emotional part. And, and,
Yeah,
and it's hard. And you remember why you're doing it. And then memories flood back of things you never even thought of before. All flood back to you.
and then yeah, and then when it all hits you at once, it's a lot.
Hmm. Yep.
It just takes over.
Yep. Telling. So I think telling your story and is part of healing.
Yep,
It's definitely it's something that I never thought of it this way until recently, and it's I'm proud to have survived.
absolutely.
I'm not happy. I'm happy. Yeah, of course I'm very happy to survive, but I'm proud of of surviving and going on to do other things. You know, I it's there's nothing holding me back except myself. I'm the only one.
I agree with you. Uh, I'm very proud I survived, and there was moments. that I told Tiffany that it would have been so much easier if I would have just died that day.
Hmm.
And, you think about it and it's like, yeah, this I wouldn't have had to go through the excruciating pain that I went through physically and mentally. My family, yeah, they would have been upset, but the amount of shit that I've put them through because of my emotions.
Yeah.
So it's always that part where you look at it and you're like, yeah, all right, I survived, but I'm also hurting my loved ones because I can't control my brain anymore
Hmm.
and my emotions. And it just kills you. And then you sit there and you think, you're like, it would have been easier just to die.
Yeah.
But I think really what helped me was Tiffany pushing me to do social media, to get on, to start this podcast
Uh-huh.
and to start connecting with people. And I was like, I being blue collar my whole life and working these jobs to sit in front of a camera and talk to it. I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But when I started doing it and people reaching out, like, oh my God, you telling your story has helped me get through my experiences. That there was like, all right, this is it. This is why I survived, to try to help other people.
Yeah.
And I absolutely I love it. And to sit here and talk to all the men and women I've had on the podcast and hear their stories, what they go through life, it's why I do it. And I look now and I'm like, I am glad that I survived, for my kids, my wife, for me,
Hmm. Yeah.
to help others now.
Yeah. The giving back, um, for me is probably the best part of
Yeah.
of the entire journey. From everything I can think of, and the people I've met because of what happened, and the and just being happy to live life.
Which it does it really does help. And I know that a lot of people will never understand this because in the hospital, I think, and even out of the hospital, I think one of the worst things that I could hear that just irked me was either a doctor or a nurse or somebody on the street, man, I feel bad for you, blah, blah, blah. I know exactly how you feel, man. I understand. No, no, you do not. I had doctors. I understand how it feels. I promise you, you don't.
Yeah, I agree.
You're a liar.
I agree.
But for somebody that has been burned, which uh, made an amazing friend in the hospital, his name was Dwayne.
Uh,
He was electrocuted. He came out of nowhere one day, comes into my room, and he is missing an eye. He has a flap over his eye, and you could see his scars, his burns. And he walked in and he was like, "Hey, I know what you're going through.
yeah,
If you need somebody to talk to, I'm here." And to hear him say that, I was like,
yeah.
I needed that. You have that. He knows how this feels.
Hmm.
So for anybody that's watching this, if you have been hurt, any traumatic experience, tell your story, because there is somebody that needs to hear it, that it is going to help them because they think they're alone in this.
Yeah.
Which, you guys, if you're going through something like this, you're not alone.
No, there's a lot
You're
of
not alone.
I've met a lot of people over the last 10 years, and the topic of what happened always comes up at
Yeah.
some point. Um, but I think that sharing um, sharing that story with that person, uh, and then knowing what you went through is healthy. Yeah, it just makes me think. I was thinking about it in my head right now. I was thinking about it for the longest time. Uh, I didn't I didn't want to believe I had been burned uh,
Yes.
for months and months and months and months. I think my doctors asked, my parents asked, my wife asked, do you want to talk to another survivor? And I said no
Yeah.
for the longest time. I said no, and I think that was part of uh, not really accepting what had happened yet. And then I remember finally meeting a girl named Whitney, um, who was the first survivor I ever met. I'll never forget it. She was a rodeo champion, and had been burned in a accident, and had burned her hands severely. And I remember her telling me she thought she'd never, do the whole roping thing again.
Yeah.
And here she is in my hospital room telling me how she's roping again. And it's just I didn't. I think I was in my own pit of despair. I didn't believe it at the time, but it moved me forward. You
It
know, I
gives you hope.
Yeah, I had finally broken down, was at the point of like, accepting what had happened and accepting, a new life. Um, that moved me towards that point. And it didn't happen at that point. It wasn't, like, oh my God, I'm a burn survivor. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
Uh, it moved me towards, like I said, acceptance of,
Which
of
is
what would happen.
extremely hard is accepting it.
Yeah.
It's so hard. I didn't wanna accept it. My biggest thing was why? Why me?
Mm-hmm.
Why me? That's all I kept asking myself, like, "Why? What
Yeah.
did I do wrong in life that this has happened to me?"
Yeah. I'm sure we've all.
And it just gets to a point, it's just like, it's done.
Yeah.
It's done, there's nothing you can change, you can't go back in time, you can't go in the future.
Hmm.
You you just have to live life,
Yeah.
try to enjoy it. You can't be stuck wondering why.
Yeah. No, and I think that, it goes back to getting the help from a
Yes.
therapist. I mean, it's if we could do it ourselves, I think me or you, blue collar. I think if you said, "Can you do this? Get this done?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll get it done." Of course,
Yeah.
you just can't fix the mental side without some help.
No, you definitely need help.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
someone to guide you and just someone to tell your story to.
Yep.
It's healthy. So
Very true. So, do you have any big plans coming up?
wow,
Do you have
I,
any
I got plans. Nothing as big as Kilimanjaro,
Okay.
um, but I am going to take a group of burn survivors and hike across the Grand Canyon in one day as a fundraiser for a nonprofit that I support.
I love it.
So we are going to, and so everyone knows the Grand Canyon, right? And, seen it in a picture. Some have seen it in person. Uh, it's it's pretty expansive. So we're going to hike from the north rim uh, to the south rim in one day. It's 25 miles across the canyon, and it's about 6,000 foot of elevation change, go down and up. Uh, so it's rough. It's a tough one. So I tell people this just for perspective. There's about 6 million or so people visit the Grand Canyon every year. Less than 1% hike to the bottom.
Oh, Jesus.
So that's the newest. Kind of let me challenge myself and let these survivors challenge. It's healing. It'll be healing for them.
Have
You
you
know,
ever done it before?
I've never done it in one day.
Okay, so
I,
you've done it in a
yeah,
couple days, but you have
yeah,
done it.
yeah. I've hiked to the bottom. Well, I've hiked to the bottom numerous times. I've hiked from north to south one time uh, last year, and it was over 3 days.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so it wasn't a one day. Let's just do this. But like I said, it's I think it's healing. So we've got a group of 11 going, 4 burn survivors, including myself, some donors to the foundation. And I think a really cool experience is we have some firefighters joining us. So
Awesome.
the firefighters see you at your worst, and they
Yes.
saw me at my worst, and they're going to see me at our best. So I think it's healing, healing for them as well. They
Absolutely.
don't always know the end result of what their work has done. Um, so it's healing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're gonna hike across the Grand Canyon. For anyone who wants to cheer us on, May 17th, 2025 is when we're starting. And yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear
Very
about
much.
this.
Yeah, no big production like Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Uh, just walking. It's like our motto for this hike is one step at a time. It's very fitting for a burn survivor, I think,
100%.
to do it because everything is one step at a time. Learn to walk again. Learn to feed yourself. Heal up the wounds. Get therapy, and it's all one step at a time. Same as hiking across the Grand Canyon.
Yep.
So it'll be a great fundraiser.
I'm excited to hear about it.
I'm
Do you
looking
wanna
forward to coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you wanna shout out the foundation you're doing it for?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
So I've a little background. The foundation I support the Arizona Burn Foundation.
Yep.
So they've been around for a little over 50 years. So a lot of history with helping burn survivors. So when I was in the hospital, the Burn Foundation was there for me. That's who introduced me to Whitney. That's who brought the burn survivor to me and helped me heal. They supported my family at the time with gas cards and lodging. My parents are from Minnesota. I'm in Arizona, so my parents received lodging support from the Arizona Burn Foundation. So it's evolved. My role has kind of changed within the foundation. I went from receiving benefits as a survivor to I now sit on the board of the foundation. I'm currently the past chair, so I was the board chair last year. Currently past chair, and just doing what I can to not only number one is raise money, right? Burn injuries aren't cheap, uh,
No.
and they're long, right? I think big burn injuries spend months in the hospital and years in recovery. So, my goal is to raise money for them. But it's not only about raising money; it's about giving back. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. It feels good to give back, and I watched countless burn survivors, follow the footsteps of a lot of other burn survivors, which is just I can't believe this. I'm not going to survive it. To thriving.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to watch that journey of survive to thrive in different people.
I love it.
Yep, it's a
It's an
great
amazing
nonprofit. We do a lot of different things. Um, and my focus is survivors. We have a prevention program, we have an education program, and most importantly, we have a survivor program to get survivors to thrive again. Whether that's they need help emotionally, they need help physically, whatever it is.
You're doing a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we try to never say no. That's our motto.
Yeah. In the hospital, I remember saying no to a couple things, and my OT, he was like, "We don't use that word here.
Yeah,
You're not using it. Don't let me catch you saying it again." He's like,
yeah,
"I'm gonna give you a bunch of shit. You keep saying it. Do not say that word."
yeah. The OT. the OT and PT reps that I hated the most were the most effective.
Yes.
Then, and I think I just, I remember my one of my physical therapists. Her name is Deb, uh, and she basically told me I was going to get up out of bed and do my PT, and she kicked my parents out uh, and my wife out of the room and locked the door with me and her in the room, and said, "You're going to do it." And I got up and I did it because you know she was
Yeah.
tough, and I hated her for being tough, but it's what I needed at the time.
Eh,
Needed a little bit of tough love. You know,
that's right. Yeah,
yeah,
because if not, then, if everyone's like, "Oh, okay, you do it on your time, you do it on time." You're never gonna do it because it hurts too much or it's too much, mental side or the pain or whatever you want. You're just gonna be like, "I'm not doing it."
yeah,
You need that push
yeah,
because that push is gonna give you that, "All right, you know what? That wasn't that bad.
yeah,
So tomorrow when I go to do it, I'm gonna get up and I'm doing it."
yeah. That's the people around you. I mean, they push hard, and they
Yep.
they need to because I think they're fully aware of what's going on. The survivor themselves is living day to day.
Yes.
In that early stage, it's just day to day. I'm happy to wake up. I'm happy to go to bed. And
That's yeah.
whatever happens in between is whatever happens in between.
Yeah.
So
Well, Jason, it was absolute honor having you on the podcast and talking with you.
thank you,
Uh, you're
sir.
doing you're doing absolutely just beautiful things. I do wanna have you back on after you do your hike. I wanna know more about that. I wanna know how it went, the experience from you guys.
Yeah, we'll have to schedule the day after.
Alright.
I typically during most big hikes like that I can barely walk. It's rough, so you'll get the full glory of what just happened the day after.
Yeah. I'm
So
gonna get the raw truth from it. How was it? It was
yeah,
terrible.
there'll be a lot of cuss words. There'll be a lot
Yep.
of bleeps in this podcast.
Alright, Jason, it was amazing having you on, man. I thank you again.
All right, brother. Thank you for having me.
Alright, you take it easy.